Florida deputy killed after officer roommate jokingly fires gun he thought was unloaded, officials say. If someone can become a policeman without getting to the level of understanding that a weapon is not a toy, then there is definitely a problem with police training. The guy who jokingly fired the gun should be charged, sentenced to prison, and blacklisted from going back to law enforcement. Accidentally loaded, accidentally chambered a round, accidentally pointed at a person, accidentally pulled the trigger. So many accidents have to occur to accidentally shoot someone. My grandmother, a country lass, taught me a horse always kicks and a gun is always loaded. Treat every gun as though it had live ammo is basically the golden rule of gun safety. Now I know you must be grieving because I shot your son, but it was just a joke, bro. You don't jokingly fire a gun. You absolutely don't jokingly fire a gun towards someone. You absolutely fucking don't think the gun is unloaded. It is always loaded, always, unless confirmed personally. This is not an accident. Edited with strikeout. I fucking hate how they try and write this off as an accident when in fact it is a negligent homicide. Not accident. It was negligent. You don't accidentally point a gun at someone and accidentally pull the trigger as a joke. Isn't treat every firearm like it's loaded even if you're sure it isn't too on the list of gun safety rules? Unloaded or not, you don't point guns at other people for this reason. Two biggest safety rules. Finger off the trigger and point it in a safe direction at all times. They found Walsh inside the residence where he apparently succumbed immediately to a gunshot wound, Ivy said. Dude shot him in the head as a joke. I'm not a gun guy, but my grandfather, decorated U.S. Army colonel, taught me to shoot when I was a kid. First thing he said, assume every firearm is loaded, even if you'd swear it isn't. Second, never point any weapon at anyone. How were these police clowns trained? Folks, this unnecessary and totally avoidably incident not only took the life of an amazing young man and deputy, but it has forever changed the life of another good young man who made an extremely poor and reckless decision, Ivy said. Oh, so they're not going the route of the victim was no angel? Let me fix the headline for you. Florida deputy died during officer-involved shooting. As officers, you'd think they'd know the 4 basic rules of firearms. Particularly rules 1 to 3. But you know. Cops. All guns are loaded all the time. There are like 9 drummers that died from "Don't worry, it isn't loaded" proceeds to point gun at head. All guns are loaded all the time. I've never owned a gun and I know you treat every gun like a loaded gun. And this moron was paid to carry one? If only a good guy with a gun could have been there. Guns don't kill people. Highly trained police officers with guns who are just joking accidentally kill people. I think we can all agree that there just weren't enough guns present to prevent this. I'm not sure how many more were needed, but fewer isn't an option, so clearly there weren't enough. You mean it was another deputy that was this fucking dumb? These are our protectors and they wonder why we don't trust them. It's just a prank, bro. The prank. He was just doing his first desk pop. One more time for the people in the back. There is no such thing as an unloaded gun. Write that down and underline it twice. And these are the fuckers meant to protect us. Cops in the US are such a fucking a joke. I don't buy this explanation. What kind of fucking jokes involves pointing your gun at your friend and pulling the trigger? While I doubt that it will, this ought to be investigated. Jokingly lock him up for a few years to make sure he has learned his lesson. Florida deputy murdered after roommates points a loaded gun at him and pulls the trigger. It wasn't an accident. It was negligent. There is no such thing as a gun accident because if you treat a gun responsibly you can't have an accident. Damn, cops out here doing the Lord's work for once. 0. Having both the IQ of a cop and someone from Florida is basically asking for this Lamau. You just know it had to happen in Florida. No, sorry, it's murder. You pointed a gun at someone and fired it, 110 to pull the trigger. Murder. Edit, I consider it murder, but I know it doesn't match the legal definition of murder. Always assume a gun is loaded. Never point it at anything you don't want to kill. Basics. Add this to the list of already 1.5 million things fucked in the common American policeman's mind. Guns are nothing more than toys and it's perfectly reasonable to jokingly kill people. Oh wait, the public already knew that about you dirty pigs. Couldn't you just have parked him on the railroad tracks? First rule of guns: do not point them at people unless you intend to kill them. Even a freaking robot knows this. When will someone actually do some investigative reporting on the people that train these imbeciles? No, no and no. The only time you point any kind of firearm towards someone is if you intend to shoot them, otherwise trigger safety protocol and it's pointed at the damn floor. Idiots mishandling guns, especially anyone who uses it for their livelihood, should have their cell door hit them in the ass as they walk through. Guys, chill out, it was just a joke. The reason you treat them like they'll always load it is because when you're 100 sure they aren't, sometimes they are. Just two cops, sitting at home, and pretending to shoot each other. Yup, sounds like we don't have a police problem in the US. Tinfoil hat time, I'd wager said deputy was investigating something within the department too. I grew up in a gun family and have been around firearms since childhood. The rules are easy. Rule 1, treat the gun as if it is always loaded. Rule 2, did you just check the chamber mag to make sure it is unloaded? It doesn't matter, the gun is always loaded. Rule 3, never point a gun at anything, anyone unless you intend to destroy it. These are not difficult concepts. Nonetheless, very tragic and preventable. Or the victim found out about something shady going on in the department. Cue accident. Upside, as many as 2 cops removed from duty. Down votes, do your worst. Re-sp on C blage on now, ni, rs. He wasn't taught to never dry fire a gun? Gun safety tip: only play with guns that you know are loaded. That way, you won't be surprised. Damn, I hate seeing these, always treat a gun as if it's loaded and don't point it at anybody you're not trying to kill. That's gun safety 101, man face palming. Do they know that this was definitely an accident? The victim died immediately. They were best friends and roommates. People are murdered by those closest to them. Anyone who can't follow the 2 most basic rules of guns deserves to go to prison. Like seriously, it's not hard to treat every firearm as loaded, and to never point a gun at someone unless you intend to kill him. It's actually impossible to kill anyone with a gun if you do those 2 simple things. Blunt trauma aside, but at that point you're no longer using the firearm as a firearm anyways. Wayne Ivey is a constitutional sheriff. He talks a big game about law and order. Let's see him put the hammer down on his surviving deputy. Who trained Andrew Lawson in the academy? Who signed off on his training? They are partially responsible. When are we going to decide that guns are more dangerous than they are fun and totally constitutional? Because there are a lot of accidental shootings. After a gun safety class, it should be hard to point even a water gun at someone. He failed the first rule in gun safety as a police officer, life in prison for first-degree period. He must have died of laughter. Broke rule 1 and 2 of basic gun safety right there. Always treat a gun as loaded. Never point a gun at something you don't want to shoot, even when unloaded. I don't know how they train police in Florida, but you learn that before you're even allowed on the range, let alone allowed to hold a gun. It's almost as if you shouldn't treat weapons as toys.